Have you ever silenced your own joy just because someone else might call it attention seeking? Have you ever delayed a dream not because you doubted it, but because you couldn't bear the thought of someone watching you try? What if we were never really afraid of failing, but only afraid of being seen as failures? What if being called uncool, unpolished, mshamba, or kienyeji wasn't the real fear, but the shame they trained us to feel not to fit in? And what if conformity isn't safety, but a slow, silent kind of death? This episode is not about fighting the world, it's about unlearning the fear of its gaze. It's about choosing courage even when your voice trembles. It's about raising your hand, your voice, your dreams when every muscle says stay invisible. This is for the quiet ones, the overthinkers, the late bloomers, the ones who have something to say but are still waiting for the right moment not to be judged. The moment is now. My name is Immaculate, and I am a survivor. I often ask myself, was it really shyness that held me back? Or did I just grow in a world that punished visibility? When I was a little girl, I remember playing with the neighbors' kids. You know how kids are, raw, honest, and often unknowingly cruel. We were playing Mchongwano, a popular game in Kenya, where the goal is to shame and belittle through jokes. But for me, it wasn't just a game. It was a series of blows to a self-esteem already growing in silence. They teased me for being too quiet, too naive, too untraveled. Mshamba, they called me. And so I stood tall, heart racing, and told them proudly, I've been to Tanzania, Dar es Salaam in particular. It was true, or so I thought. My mother had taken me there once, and I believed she'd back me up. So I took them to her, expecting her to defend me. But when I asked her, tell them, Mom, tell them we've been to Tanzania, she paused and said no. The silence that followed felt louder than the laughter that erupted. I cried. I was crushed. I couldn't understand why the woman I trusted most denied the one truth I had. Later, when I asked her, she simply said, I just don't like bragging. God hates pride. And right there, in that moment, something in me cracked. Not just because I was hurt, but because I inherited a mindset that it is holier to be silent than to speak truth if that truth sounds like pride. That to be humble is to be invisible. That God defends you so you don't need to defend yourself, even if it means letting your child walk back into a circle of mockery alone. Years later, I realized she wasn't trying to hurt me. She was raised that way too. But that small moment planted a seed that told me speaking up is wrong, defending yourself is arrogance, and being seen is dangerous. And it wasn't the last time I'd be faced with that kind of fear. And isn't that how many of us were raised? Taught to downplay, to defer, to disappear, until we don't know how to stand up, even when the fire's leaking at our heels. The fear of being perceived is not neutral, it is heavily gendered, heavily cultural, and heavily policed. Patriarchy teaches girls to be likable, quiet, and unthreatening. It praises silence as virtue and calls assertiveness rebellion. It weaponizes the word shameless, especially when women dare to be seen. We internalize this, carrying generations of caution in our bodies. We learn to make ourselves small. We fear attention, but we also ache for it. We are told to glow, but only if we dim ourselves just enough to not make anyone uncomfortable. And then we wonder why visibility feels unsafe. Fast forward to 2021. I told my then best friend that I wanted to start a YouTube channel. She didn't even pause. She immediately mentioned a cooler girl who, in her opinion, had tried YouTube and failed, subtly implying that if it had not worked for her, yet she was way polished, it surely wouldn't work for me. Her words were cloaked in sisterhood but soaked in doubt, a backhanded blessing. She didn't say I couldn't do it, but her tone suggested I shouldn't bother. And when I did not let the fear stick, when I said, I'll do it anyway, she said, whatever you want, sis, we are here to support you. It stung, not because I needed her approval, but because I could sense the fear she projected. She was projecting her fear of failure, of being perceived, of trying and being seen trying. And had I let her fear become mine, I would not have built this community, shared my stories, or learned that sometimes courage is quiet, but it's impact is thunderous. I didn't shrink. I had learned to recognize when fear isn't mine to carry. And guess what? When my first video gained views quickly, she started her own channel right after. Not out of malice, but perhaps because my audacity reminded her that she too could. And I didn't hold it against her because I now understand sometimes your courage activates others people's permission to try. Is it really cringe? Or is it only cringe when we are being watched? We don't fear the act of trying. We fear being perceived trying. We shrink not because failure is so terrible, but because being seen fail feels unbearable. The fear lies in their gaze, their imagined judgments, their assumed whispers. We perform our lives not for ourselves, but for the invisible audience in our minds. We delay dreams until no one is looking. We wait for permission, applause, or at the very least, invisibility. But what if the very freedom we seek is buried under the weight of those imaginary eyes? Shame is a survival strategy. It tells us stay quiet, stay hidden, stay safe. The brain is wired to avoid social exclusion. It interprets being judged or mocked as danger. And for many of us, visibility feels like exposure. Vulnerability feels like risk. But what we forget is the same spotlight that can expose your flaws can also illuminate your brilliance. You can't selectively hide. You either dim it all or you shine it all. I've started doing things that once made me tremble. Every time I take a step without explaining myself, every time I show up online, even when the fear whispers, What will they say? I reclaim a piece of the girl who was silenced that day in the compound, and I remind her, you don't need validation to exist boldly. I now see my self-expression as a garden. Every time I show up boldly, I plant a seed. Some seeds bloom fast, others take seasons. But the point is, I'm no longer tending a garden of fears. I'm growing one of freedom. To the little girl who cried in front of the kids that day, you were not uncool or mshamba. You were magical. You didn't need to be defended to be valid. And I am sorry you weren't believed, but I believe you now. To my current self, you are still learning to speak even when your voice shakes. You still wonder what people will say, but you do it anyway. That's what makes you brave. And to my future self, may you never forget the girl who kept going despite the noise. May your life be filled with bold, beautiful risks, and may your silence never be mistaken for shame again. This is not about blame, it's about breaking the loop. The fear of being perceived is inherited, but healing, that's a choice, a daily one. So, to anyone out there afraid to try, afraid to be mocked, afraid to be misunderstood, you are not alone. Your voice is not too much. Your dreams are not silly, and your truth does not need a crowd to be valid. My name is Immaculate, and I am a survivor.